very good evening and a warm welcome to the news live on Rupavahini Channel I. I'm Sharon Masquinius.
A very good evening indeed. I'm Charita Minipurarachi and here are today's headlines.
Jamaica wins the Miss World crown for the fourth time. The President instructs for operations of the Hamburg National Solid Waste Management Project to be initiated within a month. The Premier assures that development projects that have come to a standstill will be recommenced. The female staff member of the Swiss embassy to be examined by a team of psychiatrists tomorrow. A rise in dengue cases reported in the months of November and December. The leader of the British Labour Party apologises to supporters on the election defeat.
On to the stories in detail now, starting off with local news. Jamaica's Toni Ann Singh was crowned Miss World 2019 yesterday. She said she will use her title to work for a sustainable change for women and children.
Miss World 2019, the 69th edition of the Miss World pageant, was held last night at the Excel London in London, United Kingdom. Miss Jamaica was crowned Miss World 2019. Miss World is the oldest running international beauty pageant. It was created in the United Kingdom by Eric Morley in 1951.
Miss World 2019 is Jamaica.
Toni Ann Singh, 23, was born in Morant, St. Thomas, Jamaica. She is a psychology and women studies graduate of the Florida State University. Singh was crowned by Miss World 2018 Vanessa Ponce of Mexico before making her first walk as Miss World 2019 and waving to the audience and contestants. The two runners-up for the crown were Miss France and Miss India. This is the fourth time that a representative from Jamaica is crowned as Miss World since 1959. Jamaica has previously won Miss World titles in 1963, 1976 and 1993. It's also the first time that all top beauty pageants, Miss USA, Miss Teen USA, Miss America, Miss Universe and now Miss World have crowned black women as their winners.
Hi, this is my lovely mother, Jareen, and my father, Brad Shaw. And he's wearing my my college cap, Florida State. I was shocked. I had to take a moment to say, they said Jamaica, so that means you, and that means get out there. But it was just so surreal. I had to really pull from within to get it back together. Because how crazy is that? I want to make a change that's sustainable. So if we're talking women, hi Dan, if we're talking women, it needs to be something that will make sure that their children and their children's children have a different value of life, if that makes sense. So it's not just about making a change now. I want to see that change continue on for generations, and then I'll feel as though I've done something.
Miss World 2019.
And meanwhile, the National Solid Waste Management Project in Hamburg came under the observation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today. The project has been launched by the Hamburg Urban Council. The project was initiated upon JICA aid. The plant has a capacity of generating compost through the processing of 50 tons of waste per day. Upon observing the project, the President instructed the company that has undertaken the contract with the officials at the site to accelerate the construction work and commence operations of the plant within a month. This project has been implemented as a solution to the waste disposal issue in the Hamburg town. The year-end concert of the Carlton Custer Pre-Schools was held at the Hamburg International Conference Hall this morning. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa joined in the concert as a special invitee upon an invitation extended by the chairperson of Carlton Pre-School, Shiranti Rajapaksa. In addition, a group of guests including Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, parliamentarians Namal Rajapaksa and D.V. Chanaka were also part of the event.
Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa says the development projects which came to a standstill during the previous regime will be recommenced. The Premier made this comment joining a religious ceremony held at Tangol Vanavasakuda Viharaya yesterday. The chanting of Pirit took place at the Viharaya to mark the 93rd birthday of the Venerable Vavahamanduwa Vachiswara Thera. The Thera is the chief incumbent of the Tangol Vanavasakuda Viharaya, the Badagiriya Rajama Viharaya and the Kirilapane Sri Siddhartha Ramaya. Responding to a question raised by a journalist as to what steps will be taken with regard to the construction of the Hambantota industrial town, which was initiated by the previous government, the Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa said they have recommenced the projects that were stopped. He further stated the lands reclaimed from the industrial town will be selected and investors will be implemented. He further stated a plan in this regard is being communicated across diplomatic missions and their representatives. Responding to a question raised by a journalist as to what decision will be taken on the Hambantota port and the Mattala airport, the Premier said, selling the port and in turn selling their principals is not what should happen. The Premier alleged what has happened in Hambantota is the lands they set aside were completely destroyed and deployed on other purposes. He says this needs to be rectified.
And the Swiss embassy staff member by the name of Ganya, Barrister Francis, who was alleged to have been abducted, will be sent for a medical examination by a team of psychiatrists tomorrow. The courts have instructed the CID to submit the report on the 17th of this month. The CID questioned Ganya Barrister Francis on a number of occasions. The report on the interrogations was submitted in court in the 13th of this month, and the court ordered for a report on her mental and physical health to be submitted once an overseas travel ban was imposed until the 17th of this month.
The CID will produce in court tomorrow the two individuals by the names of Atula Sanjeeva Maddanayaka and Anthony Douglas, who appeared at a media briefing during the presidential election campaign claiming to be white van drivers. Appearing at a media briefing convened by then Minister Dr. Rajitha Senaratne on the 10th of November, the pair claimed to be white van drivers. The Sinhalay organisation lodged a complaint on the 11th of last month with the CID in this regard, stating that the views expressed at the said media briefing harmed the image of the incumbent president. The suspects were arrested on the 13th of this month.
And meanwhile, the Sinhala organisation calls on the government to meet our justice for Sandeep Gunawardena, who met with an accident. Convener of the organisation, Venerable Ittakande Saddati Satera, expressed these views at a media briefing in Colombo today. Sandeep Gunawardena sustained injuries in a motor accident that occurred on the 28th of February 2016. The accident occurred when the motorcycle of the youth hit with a vehicle of former Minister Partale Champika Ranaweka. An individual by the name of K.M. Gayashan, submitting an affidavit as an eyewitness statement, alleged that it was former Minister Partale Champika Ranaweka who drove the vehicle at the time of the accident. The submission took place on the 4th of March 2016. The courts recently decided to impose an overseas travel ban on the former Minister Partale Champika Ranaweka and his driver. The former minister convened a media briefing in this regard yesterday. Former Minister Partale Champika Ranaweka says the incident was simple motor accident amongst tens of thousands of motor accidents that took place in the country. Responding to the former minister's statement, convener of the Ravana Balaya organisation, Venerable Ittakande Saddati Satero said, as a result of the so-called simple motor accident, the aggrieved youth Sandeep Gunawardena is now an invalid who suffers from a speech impediment, weakness of the limbs, and is unable to get about in routine activities but has to friend her aged patients.
Sri Lanka and Egypt have held discussions on enhancing bilateral relations across a number of fields. Discussions were held at the inaugural session of the bilateral political consultations between Sri Lanka and Egypt and the Egyptian Foreign Ministry in Cairo. Joining in the session, Sri Lanka's Foreign Secretary Ravinath Ariyasinghe called for the regaining of Sri Lanka's economic prominence in Egypt to its traditional strength. The session was co-chaired by the Egyptian Assistant Foreign Minister for Asia, Ambassador Hani Salim. Egypt has requested Sri Lanka investors to invest in the fields of agriculture, tourism, textiles and garments, communication and information technology and oil refinement.
Parliamentarian Professor Ashu Marasinghe says the leader of the United National Party, former Prime Minister Recommenced, appointed a 6-member committee to decide on the future path of the party, and it is disappointing to note that two of the members have withdrawn from the committee. Speaking at a media briefing held today, Professor Ashu Marasinghe said they have proved themselves in deeds and in times of crisis. Therefore, the leader of the party appointed him as a member of the committee. Professor Marasinghe made it clear that the members who withdrew did not take such a decision because of him.
In other stories, a political party was launched in Jaffna today under the name the Tamil National Party, under the leadership of N. Srikantha, who was the former General Secretary of TELO, which is an affiliated party of the Tamil National Alliance. The General Secretary of this new party is former parliamentarian M.K. Sivalingam. Leader of the party, N. Srikantha, says as the people of the North are disappointed with the Tamil National Alliance, his party will commit itself to give a new leadership to the Tamil people. Speaking at a media briefing held in Jaffna today, leader of the Tamil National Party, N. Srikantha, said the aspirations of the Tamil people need to be taken forward and they would like to say that they will fulfill this task appropriately. He says the creation of a new party was an utmost need of the present times as the Tamil people are disappointed with the Tamil National Alliance. He alleges that the Tamil National Alliance is deceiving the Tamil people.
Minister Mahinda Amaravira says the electricity board incurs a loss of 80 billion annually. However, the minister says the government does not intend to increase transportation fees, the prices of fuel electricity charges. The minister worshipped at the temple of the Tooth Relic in Kandy this morning. Thereafter, the minister paid a courtesy call on the chief incumbent of the Malwatha chapter, Most Venerable Thibbatuwave Sri Sumangala Thera, and obtained blessings. Former Governor Sarath Ekanayaka also joined in the moment. Speaking to the media, Minister Mahinda Amaravira said they will reveal all fraud and corruption that has taken place in institutions and will definitely implement a plan to penalize those connected with such irregularities. He further stated all such institutions are running at a loss and the electricity board alone, the loss for the year is 80 billion. He noted there are 19 such institutions including the railways and the CTB. He further stated plans have been prepared to transform all these institutions into profit-making entities. The minister also said although the electricity board is running at a loss, there is no decision to increase electricity charges, whilst bus fares and train fares will also not be increased. The minister also said a number of LNG power plants will be initiated. He alleged over the past few years it was not possible to commence a single power plant. He says this is why today the country is facing a power issue and that is the same reason for the losses. He added it is needed to implement an alternative solar power project.
Illustrious emerging markets investor Dr. Mark Mobius says that the high economic growth is possible for Sri Lanka with the new policies introduced and initiated by the incumbent government. He said that Sri Lanka has a great opportunity in attracting most of the trade with its strategic position between Europe and Asia. The guru of the emerging market investments made these remarks in an exclusive interview with the national television recently.
Can you say about the future prospects of Sri Lanka, considering the past and the looking at the future?
The situation looks very, very good now. As you know, in the last few years, the economy has not done too well. But if you look at the history of Sri Lanka, you know that high growth is definitely possible. You've had some years where the economy was growing at more than 8%. And I believe you can achieve that again with new policies that are going to be instituted by the new government. So I'm very encouraged by what I see. And probably most important is the government to consider more listing of big state-owned enterprises so that there's more transparency and the state-owned enterprises can improve their capital raising and expand.
You came to a very good point, the technological based development, technological innovations and the new technologies into the financial sector, marketing sector. This will be really important. So could you elaborate more on when we consider the Sri Lankan prospects?
Well, if you look at the incredible strategic position that Sri Lanka has here between Asia and Europe and the Middle East, there's an incredible opportunity for Sri Lanka to capture a lot of the trade that goes between those areas of the world and also encourage cruise ships to stop here, and that will boost tourism as well. There's no reason why Sri Lanka can't have more than 10 million visitors a year. That means triple what you're getting now. Number one, I think they've got to simplify the tax system. Right now it's much too complex, making it very difficult for people actually who want to pay their taxes properly. That's number one. And part of this simplification process is digitization. In other words, there has to be more and more online tax compliance so that people can pay online and can receive notices online or through the internet. That again will simplify and speed up the process of tax collection. And then with these measures, simplification and digitization, you will then find out you're actually collecting more, and that will enable you to lower the rate of taxes. You must remember that if the tax rate is too high, you're not going to be competitive with countries in the region, number one, and number two, you're going to get less compliance. So you've got to make taxes reasonable so people are willing and able to pay.
The government can pay its attention, its investment. Now Sri Lanka has a problem in attracting investors, especially FDIs. We could evidence that in the past as well. So what can you say? What can we do? What can Sri Lanka do?
I think first of all is make it much easier to have incoming investments. In other words, reduce the amount of paperwork and procedures that have to be followed in order to do that. And also, the same thing is true of travel. In other words, make travel easier with visa-free status for many countries. That will encourage people to come in more easily. And then, as I mentioned, put a lot of these state enterprises on the stock exchange, listed. Doesn't mean you're going to privatize, but it means that you list these companies, maybe sell a very small percent, maybe 10% of the shares, and then that means that there'll be a lot more transparency and an ability for these companies to raise more capital to expand.
Sri Lanka and other countries, we have bilateral agreements, trade agreements, and free trade agreements. Now, how can Sri Lanka move forward along with these ones? What should Sri Lanka do in the future when we consider free trade agreements with other powers?
I think it's very difficult to establish truly free trade agreements because there's so many non-tariff barriers that are imposed by both sides at one stage or the other. So the best way is to establish trade agreements, but not necessarily free trade, but reduced tariff, and then eventually gradually move towards a free and freer structure and do bilateral agreements rather than multilateral agreements. Multilateral agreements often tie you into very difficult situations as regards to some of your own industries.
The Institute of Epidemiology states a rise in the number of reported dengue cases has been observed in the months of November and December. This is seen as a relative increase in comparison with the first few months of this year, and this tendency is likely to continue. Consultant physician Dr. Ananda Vijay Vikrama of the Non-Communicable Disease Institute says a rise in the number of dengue cases has been reported, and there is a risk of the numbers increasing with the onset of the monsoons. Therefore, special attention is being focused on eradicating dengue mosquito breeding grounds. The public are advised systematically dispose waste and specially remove plastic containers in which fresh water gets collected. Over the past 2 months, the highest number of dengue patients, which was 9,198, have been reported from the Western Province. In the Central Province, the number of patients reported was 4,025, whilst 4,007 patients were reported from the Northern Province. District-wise, the highest number of patients have been reported from the Colombo, Jaffna, Kandy and Gampaha districts. The number of patients reported has been closed upon 25,000 within 2 months. 90 deaths caused by dengue have been reported during this year. Consultant physician Dr. Anand Vijay Vikram said when they studied the case in which dengue has resulted in death, they observed the reason being the use of unsuitable pharmaceuticals. Dr. Vijay Vikram explained they suspect dengue when patients complain of high fever, body pains, severe headache and vomiting. If such symptoms manifest, Dr. Vijay Vikram says it is imperative to seek medical attention.
Now, in other stories, a bird known in the village areas as Alimawa was spotted in the Haliala area this morning. This bird, which is usually seen in the wetlands, was spotted in a Mara tree. This bird usually favors the wetlands in the dry zones and environment around water bodies. Residents in the area state the Alimawa bird is frequently seen in the Central Hills during the time when paddy is cultivated.
Minister of Investment, Promotion and Civil Aviation Prasanna Ranatunga says 50,000 graduates will be awarded employment by next January. He disclosed this move joining in a Bilateral meeting of the Sri Lanka Padujana Peramuna in Athanagala. Minister Prasanna Ranatunga said by next January a program will be prepared to award employment to 54,000 graduates in the country. Vacancies that need to be filled in state institutions will be identified and then will be recruited. The minister says they will have taken steps to create a transformation in the education sector. He says the government has prepared a plan for all teachers to become graduates. The minister also observes since recently young children have got together and painting pictures on walls along the roads. He says such activities have not been instructed by anyone but also spontaneous. He says these children have been impressioned that when the rule of the country is going to the correct direction, they also should do something productive.
Safari associations in the Hamburg area point out an irregularity has occurred in the constructions of tanks at the Hurlu Environmental Park. They note the situation has resulted in the park running the risk of closure. The Hurlu Environmental Park is a popular location to sight elephants in the wild. It is significant since the opportunity is given to observe elephants any time of the day. Recently, the construction of 2 tanks commenced at the park at a cost of over 20 million rupees. However, only 2 large pits are to be seen, whilst the bund of 1 has broken. The safari associations point out the situation is such that even jeeps find it difficult to operate along the road of the park, as heavy vehicles involved in the constructions run on the same road, damaging it. They note if the park is closed, it will result in many jobs being lost.
And tea estate smallholders say the price of a kilo of raw tea leaves, which was at 75 rupees, has increased to 100 rupees. They point out the reason to the economic policies of the new government. The reason for the rise in the prices of tea leaves are the prohibition of the importation of tea for re-exportation and the positive growth recorded in the share market. In the Galle district alone, there are around 75,000 small tea estate holders. In addition, a number of small tea estate holders are found in the Ratnapura, Mathura and Kardura districts. Meanwhile, the procession and ceremony was held in the Hatton town today to mark International Tea Day. The participant called on the authorities to ensure a suitable wage for state workers to maintain proper living standards and assure esteem in their employment.
The 15th International Tripitaka chanting ceremony was held in Bodh Gaya, India from the 3rd to the 12th of December. Bhante Thalangama Devananda, chief incumbent of the Indian and Buddhist Temple of USA, chanted Bodh Gaya Girimananda Sutta for the closing ceremony at the International Tripitaka chanting. Theravada monks from various countries including Thailand, China, Vietnam and devotees participated in the International Tripitaka chanting ceremony underneath the most sacred Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya. The ceremony was organized by the International Tripitaka Chanting Council. This year, the ceremony was held by the Vietnam Sangha in collaboration with the International Mahasangha. Bhante Thalangama Devananda, chief incumbent of the Indian and Buddhist Temple of USA, also conducted some Dhamma activities during the ceremony.
This is my first visit to Bodh Gaya, India actually. This is a very interesting country for me. Many years I read our great master, our great teacher, Lord Buddha's story and his teaching. But today is my first day, Bodh Gaya's temple. This is a very spiritual place for all human beings, not only for Buddhists. This is a spiritual place for Buddhist people, for Hindu people, for Catholic people, for Christian people and for Islam people. Whatever religion practice nowadays all over the world, the Buddhist teaching is a good practice for all human beings.
Bhante Devananda also engaged in Dhamma propagating activities in India in parallel to the ceremony. It includes the donation of meals to 40 seminaries in Bodh Gaya, India and wheelchair for needed people. Bhante Devananda also seeks the assistance of collecting donation for 100 wheelchairs for the underprivileged seniors and release 10 cows and 20 goats from slaughterhouses. He is also supposed to engage in Dhamma activities in Indonesia. That's a look at local news. Stay with us. Foreign news is coming up next.
Welcome back, and UK election in your foreign stories. Jeremy Corbyn has apologised to Labour supporters over his party's heavy defeat in the UK general election. Writing in the Sunday Mirror and The Observer, he acknowledged the party's failing in the poll and he said accepted his responsibility for it. Labour suffered its worst election results since 1935 and saw its vote share fall by 8 points. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Conservative Party won a Commons majority of 80 in Thursday's general election, his party's biggest election win for 30 years. Sweeping aside Labour in its traditional heartlands, Boris Johnson will unveil his Queen's speech on Thursday. It will include a commitment to enshrine increase in spending on the NHS in England in legislation. The Labour leader, who is expected to stand down early next year, said that the party is determined to regain the trust of lifelong Labour voters who had abandoned it. It comes as two likely leadership candidates, Liza Nandy and Jess Phillips, have set out their stalls ahead of the race to succeed Corbyn.
On sports news tonight, the first test between Sri Lanka and Pakistan ended in a draw today. The match was played at Rawalpindi in Pakistan. The third and fourth days of the test were hampered by rains. When play commenced today, Sri Lanka were at 282 runs for the loss of 6 wickets in their first innings. Dhananjay De Silva recorded his 6th century in his Test cricket career today. Sri Lanka declared at 308 for 6. In reply, Pakistan scored 252 runs for the loss of 2 wickets at the close of play today. Abid Ali, who made his debut, was 109 not out, whilst Babra Azam was 102 not out. The second test between Sri Lanka and Pakistan will be played on the 19th of this month at Karachi.
Scores his 100 in his very first innings on his home soil. And what a important and magnificent moment, not just for Barbara Assam, but for
The encounter between CHNFC and Havelock teams in the Interclub Rugby League took place at the Colombo Racecourse today. In the first half of the Havelock team scored 15 points while the CH team scored 3. In the second half, the Havelock team added another 12 points while the CH team scored 10. Thereby, the Havelock team won the match for 27 for 13.